For this painting, you will need turquoise, ultramarine blue, sap green, yellow, a lemon yellow is what I used, and then a red, a brown, and a black. We will also need 2 water containers, one for dirty and one for clean water, and also 2 brushes. Here I've used a size 10 and a size 4 brush. I've got a 9 by 12 inch watercolor paper and I've put masking tape around. Now I'm also cutting some masking tape and tearing them up and putting them on the paper at around sort of 2/3 of the way down. So starting 2/3 of the way down, all the way up into the top end of the paper. You just tear the masking tape and you use that to make these tree-like shapes. There's trees at the back and then a clump of trees at the front. You can see how I'm putting the masking tape forward on the right hand side. So you can also use the torn sides of the masking tape on the outside so that it will make more of an organic shape rather than the straight edge. Then just pat it all down, make sure they've stuck properly because we're going to be putting water all over the paper. Make sure the paper is completely soaked with the water. It should be nice and shiny. Take your time to paint the water all over the paper, making sure all the area is completely covered. You may want to lift the paper and have a look at it from an angle, and then you'll be able to find out. So next we mix the turquoise color, the turquoise blue. Make sure you have a good puddle of it and just place it onto the top thirds of the paper in just broad strokes. There doesn't have to be a particular way, just make sure you cover large areas at one time and leave that a sort of ovalish area on the left side coming towards the center. And for that area, mix up some of the coral or red and just go as sort of an oval and in a way that it touches the blue. So where it touches the blue, it will make a more purple. And then lastly, a yellow around as well, just on the inside of the red. So it gives the appearance of maybe a sunset or a sunrise. I'm just adding some more red, so that's to make it a bit more darker and more pronounced. And because the paper is wet, they will all sort of mix and mingle and will organically combine together. With the red and the yellow will mix in that border of the yellow and red to make an orange, whereas the blue will mix with the red to make a more purple/violet color. So paint like I have done now, just on the top 2/3 or just over halfway down. And you can see now the masking tape where we put it. I'm also now painting yellow onto the bottom half or bottom third of the painting. This is where I'm imagining the sunlight is going to fall on the ground. And I'm also now painting where the shadows would fall. So starting from the base of the masking tape, I'm just painting lines. I'm also thinking of what angle the shadows would fall. So on the left hand side, they would sort of lean more to the left, whereas as we're coming to the right, they're going to be leaning more towards the right. So I'm starting painting these lines from the base of the masking tape all the way to the bottom of the painting. Again, because the paper is moist, it will organically just blend out and look more like shadows with that soft edge. Also make sure that when you're painting this, that the paints are creamy so that they don't just spread out too much when you paint them. Next, we're using the brown and painting like little grass shapes or twigs on the horizon line and at the bottom of the clump of trees. So I'm just going at the place of the horizon line and putting more brown or the sepia, and I'm going to carry that all the way across. And when I come to the area that's just underneath the sun, I'm going to be putting more reds into that area so that it can reflect the effect of the sun's rays on the, I'm thinking like bushes or some kind of vegetation in the far distance, but before the sun, in front of the sun. And as we keep going, then I change it to more of a brown, but I keep carrying on that horizon line behind the clump of trees that are in the front. So we will be coming back to this later, but this is just the first layer when we're trying to put as much dark, creamy paints as possible so that there's less work for us later on. So make sure all the paints are really thick and creamy because we've already got so much water in the paper to stop it from spreading and going all over the place. When we put creamy paints, they're going to stay exactly where we put them. Now we are going to just absorb some of the paint that has strayed into the area of where the sun needs to be. So you can just pick that up with a dry brush. Next, I'm also adding some red just at the border of the place where the blue shadow meets the yellow ground where the sun's light falls. And I'm also going and adding some more details to all that vegetation as much as possible. You can see how the first layer that we added has almost softened and become very light. So I'm just thickening those colors and also adding some sort of grass-like brush strokes in the area where the sun is shining. So lots of that yellow, just do that with the side of the brush so that it gives you that irregular appearance. And I'm also going and adding some ultramarine blue in the shadows areas of the trees, right in the middle, so that it looks like those are the darker shadows. If you look at shadows, you'll find that the darkest area is in the middle, and then there is lighter areas around it, and then it almost transitions softly into the light. So that's what I'm trying to do here with giving some red in those transition areas and then putting dark blue in where the deepest shadows would be. And then just using yellow for grass that's in the actual sunlight. Now we're going to peel off the masking tape that we put in the paper. Now just make sure that the paper is not too wet, because then there is the danger of tearing the masking tape. So just be really gentle if your paper hasn't fully dried, but allow it to dry as much as you can. If you can allow it to dry fully, that's great. But if you can't, just make sure it's as dry as possible. And you can see now, because I patted down the masking tape before painting, it's left those clean lines. And the last bit of masking tape is now coming off, and we've got those nice tree shapes. We've now got to shape them into trees, for which I'm going to use my brown here, maybe even with a bit of black, and adding more of those bushes or vegetation at the bottom of the trees. And then I'm just using really nice creamy dark paint and painting the edge of the tree trunk. And this is a time when, if you want to make it more irregular, then you can. So just come outside of where that white is and make it a bit irregular. And just filling in some more while I have that creamy paint, just adding some more of the foliage at the bottom. Then once I've done that, I'm just using a watery brush to just brush fill just with water, and I'm just teasing the edge of the nice thick juicy paint, and here and there I'm just releasing it into the actual tree trunk. So I'm just running the side of a watery brush and just touching the edge of that thick brown paint that I put into the tree trunk. Once I've done that, I'm just going in with some really creamy paint and using that to put in the texture of the tree bark and the tree trunk. If you think about it, I think I base my tree on the birch trees, and they've got this sort of horizontal lines running across and then some marks on the tree. So that's what I'm trying to emulate with the patterns. I'm also adding in a branch. We will come back to this later as well, just trying to make it look more natural. The base of the branch is going to be wider, so I'm just making it a little bit wider at the base. And then I'm trying to see if maybe I can make that branch a little bit more natural looking. Next, I'm going to add the color in for the next tree trunk, and we follow a very similar pattern as we did for the first tree. So add that nice creamy brown on one side, and I'm doing it on the side that's away from the sun, and then just using now you can see it more clearly, just using that watery brush to release that paint from there, but just doing it here and there so that there are still some white streaks in between the areas of paint. And that just gives the appearance of a shadowy side and a light side to the tree. And also using this opportunity to go and add some more foliage at the bottom of the trees. And then we're going to go and just in a up and down motion to organically put in those shapes. Again, going back in to add some of those horizontal ring-like shapes on the tree trunk. And you can see I'm just continuing to build on those darks in the tree trunk. And you can see though how when we first started, the edges of the tree trunks were quite straight because of the masking tape. By using the dark bit of the tree trunk, I've made it quite irregular, just like how a normal tree would be. And then we're going to do the same thing for the next tree as well, following the exact same process. And we have another tree as well there. Adding some more darks. You can see that, the first time I paint is not the only time I do that. I keep coming back to things I've already painted and keep reinforcing the darks where they need to be reinforced. And also pulling that out a little bit with that ultramarine blue so that you can see the shadows that they cast. We're now going over to the other side and adding the dark brown on the opposite side to our previous trees because the sun is on the other side now, and trying to add a branch there. These branches could be added even with the help of a masking tape if you plan ahead, but this was just my last minute idea, so I'm doing it that way. I'm also going and adding some light watery brown to the edges of the middle tree, and also then coming and doing the same thing that I did with the other trees on the right hand side, where I'm just using water to release some of that paint so that it just flows gently into the side facing the sun. And because it's facing the sun, I'm imagining that it's all going to be yellow, so I'm adding yellow into that water now, yellow paint, that lemon yellow, and also then adding the patterns in the tree trunk. And there we have that tree. I'm also reinforcing the foliage underneath the tree with that red. You can see how the previous red we added has all just faded away. So for this tree, I'm adding a red because I'm imagining, because it's just behind, you're not going to see a lot of darks. It's a combination of red and brown actually, and then a bit of the yellow as well, so that it appears quite light against where the actual sun is. And I'm just using that yellow, adding that yellow to the lighter side of the trees on the right side of the painting as well. So adding all that yellows to sort of show that the light of the sun is falling on that side of these trees. Following this, I'm just going and reinforcing the dark rings around the tree with some more of that brown, and you can mix the brown with blue to make it darker or black, but just adding it here and there, sometimes on the right, sometimes on the left. And then we go back to the middle tree just behind the sun and add some of those darks in as well. They're probably going to be more in the middle, so I'm just putting those little lines, horizontal lines, in the middle of the tree. And so for the third tree in that group, I'm just putting that brown in the middle, and then using that yellow or a watery brush with yellow in it to just bleed the brown out into the side of the tree. And if you notice, I'm putting more brown on the right side where I imagine the darker side of the tree is going to be, because it's now moving towards the right. And I'm also using that dark brown to keep reinforcing the dark foliage in the ground just under the trees. So all of this is going to give that added complexity and depth to the painting and that distant foliage, so that you can see both highlights as well as darks. And there's a bit of blob of green just behind that tree, so I'm trying to make that into maybe a little bush or something that is behind that tree. And once we do that, we also go and reinforce the dark blue, the ultramarine blue, which is in the deepest shadows of the shadow areas of the trees. And I'm imagining there to be maybe some grass, but they are going to be blue in color because they are in the shadows. Now we go back and add the last tree where we paint the dark border on the right side, just like we did with the clump of trees on the right, and then go in with that watery brush, maybe with a bit of even yellow, weak yellow in the brush. And you can see how I'm just releasing, touching the edge of that dark brown here and there with that brush, so that we still have bits of white showing, and that the lighter side is now facing where the sun is. Following this, we are also adding some more dark brown just at the bottom of that tree trunk, so that you, and again, it's not everywhere, but we're just trying to add some texture to that tree trunk by putting some darks as well. I've obviously gone back to the branch of the tree on one side because it still doesn't look very right to me, and then adding another branch on that middle tree over there, just to make sure that it's not, the branches are not just on one tree. And you can see there's another little twig going up. Then we just put some spatter of orange in the middle of the bits of sunlight where the yellow is there. And you can see how that just adds and highlights those sunny areas a bit more, because there will still be shadows in those sunny areas, but they'll be a little bit darker. So that's why I'm using orange, which is the darker version, I suppose, of a yellow. So feel free to add spatter there. You can add spatter with the blue as well, working on those last bits of detail and adding some more of that foliage or grass that's in the horizon. And this is the time to look at the painting and see if it needs any more adding to it. Does it need any more details? Do the darks need to be emphasized a bit more? And I've decided that I actually need some dark blues, the ultramarine and the brown, in that clump of trees at the front, because actually the darkest colors are going to be at the front, which is close to you. So I've added some blue spatters there and increased the painted another layer of ultramarine over at the base of those clump of trees as well. I'm happy with it now. Hope you all enjoyed watching, and please like and subscribe for more. Thanks.